She wanted you to touch something first. Not her skin, not her waist, not her hand. Something deeper. Something most men walk right past without even knowing it exists. And because you missed it, she pulled away. Not because she didn't feel anything, but because she felt too much. And you weren't reaching the right place. This isn't about technique. This isn't about saying the right words at the right time. This is about understanding what a mature woman needs to feel before she ever lets you close, before her walls come down, before she softens, before she trusts you with the version of herself she doesn't show anyone. Most men think attraction starts with interest, a look, a laugh, a compliment that lands. And sure, those things open a door. But they don't build a room she wants to stay in. A mature woman has been through those doors before. She's heard the compliments. She's felt the initial rush. And she's learned, sometimes painfully, that most men reach for the surface and never go further. So she watches. She listens. Not to what you say, but to what you reach for first. And here's where most men lose without even knowing the game changed. You try harder. You text more. You give more energy, more attention, more availability, and you think that effort is what builds connection, but to her, it signals something very different. It tells her you don't understand what she actually needs. She doesn't need more. She needs depth. She doesn't need you louder. She needs you closer, emotionally closer. In a way most men have never been taught to move. This is the part no one tells you. Not your friends. Not the internet. Not even the women themselves. Because most of them feel it but can't put it into words. What she wants touch first is her sense of safety, not physical safety, emotional safety. She needs to feel that you are solid before she opens, that your presence is stable, that you're not performing for her approval but standing in your own gravity, that the man in front of her is not going to shift, collapse, or disappear the moment things become real. This is what separates a man she's attracted to from a man she's drawn into. Attraction fades. It always does. But the pull of emotional safety, that lasts, that deepens. That is the thing she cannot resist when she finds it. And most men never offer it. Not because they don't have it, but because they've never been told this is what matters most. You were taught to pursue, to impress, to show value through action, through effort, through visible proof that you care. But a mature woman doesn't measure your value by how much you do. She measures it by how grounded you are when you're doing nothing. Can you hold silence without becoming anxious? Can you sit in tension without rushing to fix it? Can you be present without performing? These are the questions she's answering inside her mind every time she's with you. And she's not grading you on charm, she's grading you on steadiness. This is why some men seem to do everything right and still lose her. Because they were reaching for the wrong thing. They touched her interest. They touched her excitement. They even touched her desire. But they never touched her safety. And without that, everything else is temporary. If you've ever felt like you gave everything and it still wasn't enough, it's probably because you gave everything to the wrong layer. You were generous with your attention. You were open with your feelings. But you never made her feel like she could stop guarding herself around you. That's the shift. That's the thing most men don't know. And if you stay with this, if you hear every part of what comes next, you'll understand exactly how to reach that layer. Not through effort, not through strategy, but through a kind of quiet masculine presence that most men don't even realize they're capable of. This isn't about fixing yourself. This is about uncovering what's already inside you. Stay here, because what comes next is going to change the way you see everything, not just how she responds to you, but how you carry yourself in every room you walk into. To understand what a mature woman responds to, you have to stop thinking about attraction the way you were taught. Most men believe attraction is built. Like you assemble it piece by piece, the right look, the right words, the right moment. But that's not how emotional attraction works. Not for her. For a mature woman, attraction isn't built, it's felt. And it's felt in the space between what you do and what you don't do. In the weight of your presence, in the calm behind your eyes when the world gets loud. She's not calculating whether you're good enough, she's sensing whether you're safe enough. And those are two completely different things. Here's the psychology behind it, in the simplest terms possible. A woman's emotional system is wired to detect stability, not dominance, not control, stability. Her nervous system is scanning every interaction for one core signal. Can I relax around this person? That's it. That's the foundation. When she feels like she can stop managing the space, stop reading the room, stop anticipating your reaction, that's when she begins to let you in. Not because you earned it with effort, but because your presence told her body it was safe to open. This is why you've seen women fall for men who seem to do nothing special. Men who don't chase. Men who don't flood her with attention. Men who simply exist with a kind of settled energy that says, I'm not going anywhere, and I don't need anything from you to feel whole. That energy is the touch she craves before anything else. Now, this doesn't mean being cold. This doesn't mean being distant or withholding. There's a difference between a man who is unavailable and a man who is unshakable. She can feel that difference instantly. Unavailable is empty. Unshakable is full. An unavailable man withholds because he's afraid. He plays games because he doesn't trust his own value. But an unshakable man gives freely because his sense of self doesn't depend on her response. That's the distinction most men miss entirely. And it starts showing up in the smallest moments. Not in grand gestures. Not in dramatic declarations. In the quiet things. She starts mirroring you. Your pace. Your tone. Your energy. Not because she's copying you, but because her system is syncing with yours. This is one of the earliest signs that a woman feels emotionally safe in your presence. She begins to match you without even realizing it. Her breathing slows when yours is slow. Her voice softens when yours is steady. This isn't performance, it's biology responding to something it trusts. Then her guard drops, not all at once, but in small, almost invisible ways. She tells you something she didn't plan to say. She laughs a little louder than she meant to. She lets a silence sit without rushing to fill it. These aren't signs of interest. They're signs of surrender, emotional surrender. And they only happen when a woman feels like she doesn't need to manage your perception of her. She begins protecting your image. This one is subtle but powerful. When a woman is emotionally invested in you, she starts defending you in spaces you're not even part of. She doesn't let her friends paint a negative picture. She corrects misunderstandings about your character. She shields how others see you, not because you asked, but because your image feels like part of hers now. She starts seeking your presence over your attention. This is the shift that separates surface-level interest from real emotional investment. She doesn't need you to entertain her. She doesn't need constant texts or calls. She just wants to know you're there, that your presence exists in her world, that the space between you two is alive even in silence. She respects your silence. A woman who feels emotionally safe with you will never punish you for going quiet. She won't spiral. She won't flood you with messages. She'll hold the space and trust you to return. This is rare, and it only happens when the emotional foundation is deep enough that your silence doesn't feel like abandonment. It feels like trust. These shifts don't happen because you performed well. They happen because you were present. Because you touched her sense of safety first. Before her body. Before her curiosity. Before anything else. And now you're beginning to see it. The thing most men have been missing. If what you've heard so far has stirred something, then you're ready for this part, because this part isn't about her. It's about you. There are two more shifts a woman shows when she is deeply, emotionally connected to a man, and they are the most meaningful ones. But before I tell you what they are, I need to speak directly to the man who's been doing too much for too long. You know who you are. You're the one who texted back too quickly, who planned too many things, who showed up with too much energy, too much availability, too much willingness because you thought that's what love looked like. You gave her attention when she was distant. You tried harder when she pulled away. You made yourself smaller just to keep the peace, just to stay close, just to prove you weren't like the rest. And none of it worked. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you abandoned yourself in the process. You lost frame, and I don't say that to blame you. I say it because it's the truth, and hearing the truth clearly is the first step to standing on solid ground again. Losing frame doesn't mean you were weak. It means you didn't know where you ended, and she began. You let her emotions become your compass. Her silence became your crisis. Her distance became your obsession, and in trying to close the gap, you created more of it. That's not a character flaw. That's a pattern. And patterns can be broken once you see them. So let me tell you the last two signs, because they'll help you understand what emotional alignment actually looks like. She begins to emotionally align with your vision, not your goals on paper, not your job title or your plans for the future. Your vision, your sense of direction, the quiet knowing inside you that says, "This is where I'm going." When a woman senses that you are moving with purpose, not performing purpose, not announcing it, but carrying it in the way you make decisions, the way you structure your time, the way you hold yourself accountable, she naturally begins to align. She supports without being asked. She adjusts without being pressured, not because she's submissive, but because she trusts where you're going, and she wants to be part of it. This kind of alignment cannot be manufactured. It can only be inspired by a man who is living in his own direction with conviction. The last sign is nurturing behavior, and this is the deepest one. When a woman begins to care for you, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but from a place of emotional overflow, you are no longer someone she's attracted to. You are someone she has chosen. She remembers what you said 3 weeks ago. She makes sure you've eaten. She's gentle with your stress even when hers is heavy. She creates comfort around you without being asked to. This isn't learned behavior. This is what a woman does when her emotional system has fully accepted a man as someone worth investing in. Someone who touched her safety first. Someone whose presence gave her permission to soften. And if you've never experienced this, it's not because women are incapable of giving it. It's because most men unknowingly block it. They block it by performing, by chasing, by needing reassurance so frequently that the woman never gets a chance to come toward them on her own. This is the paradox. The more you seek proof that she cares, the less space she has to show it. The more you pull, the less she gives, not because she doesn't want to, but because your pulling tells her nervous system that you are not settled, and she cannot relax into a man who is not settled. Let me say this clearly. You are never the problem. Your desire to love deeply is one of the most powerful things about you, but desire without direction creates desperation, and desperation repels what it's trying to attract. You didn't fail because you cared too much. You stumbled because you cared without anchoring that care in self-respect. And self-respect isn't something you perform. It's something you protect. It's the part of you that says, I will not abandon myself to keep someone else comfortable. I will not shrink to avoid conflict. I will not trade my peace for proximity. That part of you isn't gone. It's just been buried under layers of trying to be enough for someone else. And it's time to dig it back up. Not for her, for you. Because the version of you that stands firmly in his own identity, that is the man she cannot stop thinking about. Here's where everything changes. Not outside you, inside you. Because the truth most men are not ready to hear is this. Chasing is not effort. Chasing is fear wearing the mask of devotion. When you chase, you are not showing her that you care. You are showing her that you are afraid of losing her. And fear is the least attractive energy a man can carry into a connection. She doesn't need you to run after her. She needs to feel that you are a man worth walking toward. And that shift, from chasing to standing still, is the most powerful move you will ever make. Not because it's a tactic, but because it is the first honest thing you've done in a long time. Stillness is not silence used as a weapon. Stillness is silence that comes from being full. From knowing that your value does not depend on her reply. From understanding that your peace is not a bargaining chip. It is your foundation. When you stop chasing, something shifts in the space between you. She begins to feel your absence. Not because you disappeared, but because you stopped flooding the space with noise. And in that quiet, she's left with her own thoughts about you, her own feelings, her own pull. This is how real attraction breathes. It needs space. It needs room to move. And when you give it that room, not strategically, but because you genuinely turned your focus inward, she feels it. She feels the difference between a man who is pulling away to punish her and a man who has simply returned to himself. One creates anxiety, the other creates longing, and the difference is not in what you do, it's in why you do it. If you go quiet because you're angry, she'll sense the hostility. If you go quiet because you're hurt and waiting for a reaction, she'll sense the neediness. But if you go quiet because you've chosen to invest in your own growth, your own clarity, your own direction, she'll sense the strength. And that strength is magnetic. This is where emotional independence becomes your greatest asset. Not independence as isolation, not independence as a wall, but independence as a man who is whole without her, and chooses her from that wholeness. A woman doesn't want to be your source. She wants to be your choice. When she sees that your happiness, your peace, your stability, none of it depends on her presence, she begins to respect you in a way that goes beyond attraction. She begins to see you as someone who doesn't need to take from her, someone who brings something to the table that isn't conditional, someone whose love is not a negotiation. That is the man she stays for. Not the one who gives everything up front and then waits for a repayment, but the one who gives from overflow and expects nothing in return. Now let me reframe the entire picture for you. You've been taught to focus on winning her, on getting the girl, on earning her attention, keeping her interest, maintaining her attraction, but all of that keeps you in a position of pursuit, and pursuit, by its nature, places her above you. What if you stopped trying to win her and started trying to win yourself? What if every morning you woke up and asked, "Am I proud of the man I was yesterday?" What if every decision you made was filtered through the question, "Does this align with who I am becoming?" What if you stopped measuring your worth by her replies and started measuring it by your own discipline, your own growth, your own emotional clarity? That shift, from external validation to internal alignment, is the most attractive transformation a man can undergo, not because it impresses her, but because it changes the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you sit in silence without needing to fill it. You become selective, not arrogant, selective. You stop giving your time and energy to anyone who doesn't honor it. You stop overextending for people who haven't earned your depth. You start choosing with intention instead of reacting from fear. And the women who are drawn to this version of you will be the ones worth keeping, not because they're perfect, but because they are mature enough to recognize what you've built inside yourself. They will see your steadiness and match it. They will feel your calm and soften into it. They will respect your silence because they understand what it holds. You don't need to perform. You don't need to prove. You don't need to convince anyone of your value. You need to embody it, quietly, firmly, without apology. That's the touch she's been waiting for. Not your hand on her skin, but your presence on her soul. The feeling of being near a man who knows exactly who he is and doesn't need her to confirm it. So let me leave you with this. Are you still trying to reach her, or have you finally started reaching for yourself? Sit with that. Don't rush to answer. Just let it land. Because the man who answers that question honestly is already becoming the man she can't forget.